Hello everybody. Welcome to the Moving Your Jira to the Cloud webinar. I'm Paul Renshaw. I'm Chief Revenue Officer here at Clearvision. And Matt, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Matt Muskell.
And then yourself, Gary.
Hi, I'm Gary Blower. I'm a solution architect here at Clearvision.
Thank you very much. Okay, so to start us off, I just wanted to share some information really with you before we start the conversation. So Scott Farquhar, one of the joint owners of Atlassian, said during the last Atlassian Summit that Atlassian Cloud is where all the latest and greatest features will arrive first. This shows Atlassian's commitment towards its SaaS product, which has been the direction of travel for a number of years now. What I've always found really interesting for such a dominant Silicon Valley software vendor like Atlassian is the fact that they still have three offerings to the market. So there's the SaaS product, this is known as Atlassian Cloud. There's the enterprise high availability product, which they call Data Center. And then they still have the perpetual license-based product, normally self-hosted, which Atlassian call the server range of products. So I thought it'd be really interesting to share some stats with you before we move on to this conversation. So let me just layer some of these stats for you. So of the 150,000 customers use some form of cloud product today, and that's out of a total of 174,000. That's a huge percentage of Atlassian customers using cloud products. 95% of new customers choose cloud products first. So again, massive stats, but this is the big one. Still 75% of paid Jira and Confluence users are still on-prem. So that means they're using data center or server in some form of self-hosted behind the firewall environment. Therefore, in the context of all that information, that is what I'd like to discuss today in the journey to the cloud. So let me start off with something really simple. So Matt, if you can take this for us, why don't you just give us that really simple explanation of the word cloud? It's very overused these days, so you give us your version of that. Thank you.
Yeah, cloud is, as we all know, is a very overloaded term. And we have we have Atlassian Cloud, which is essentially falls into three categories. We have Atlassian Cloud, which is a software as a service solution, a SaaS solution. And Atlassian Cloud is multi-tenanted. It's basically provided as a service. It's a bit like Facebook. You just use it. It's there. You sign up when you want to use it. The second type of cloud is your own cloud, a customer's own cloud. In that environment, this could be on Microsoft Azure, or it could be on Amazon Web Services, AWS, where they set up their own cloud environment and you run the applications within that environment. And essentially, it's the same as running it behind the firewall on premise. It just means you now have it in a virtualized third-party environment where somebody else is the provider for the infrastructure. And the third option for cloud is what we call boutique cloud. And one of those, an example for boutique cloud is ClearHost. ClearHost is a managed service solution here that we provide here at Clearvision. And essentially what you get with a boutique cloud solution is that you have the best of both worlds. Running the tools is someone else's problem, but you're still running exactly what you had behind the firewall in the past without having to worry about how to run it. And those are the three main different solutions for cloud environments.
Fantastic. Cheers, Matt. So there we go. Very clearly, three options for customers to start to consider as they take that step towards the cloud. So Gary, let's get into some of the detail now. What are the views of some of the customers you work with on moving to the cloud?
Well, I think there's definitely a large demand at the moment to move certainly on-premise solutions to the cloud. And there's also, I would say there's a majority of the push is towards the Atlassian Cloud because, of course, a SaaS solution for many organizations, particularly small and medium-sized enterprises, is going to be a good fit. Essentially, you're just paying for the service and you've got access to the software. I think the key thing for any businesses that are considering doing this is to ensure they've got they're really clear on the business case, because moving your Jira or other Atlassian products from an on-premise solution to the cloud is not necessarily going to solve all of your problems. You may gain access to more and newer functionality in terms of the Atlassian cloud. You may gain cost savings in terms of infrastructure and support by moving to, say, a boutique service or your own or an AWS, for example, for a private cloud. But you need to be really clear as to what the main business drivers are and what the costs are going to be, and how you're going to get value on the effort that you spend. Certainly we find that a lot of organizations start off potentially not considering the actual benefits of what they're doing, more a case of strategically, we've been told we need to move to the cloud. And there's lots of opportunity actually to realize a lot of benefit in terms of both cost savings and improvements to your processes and efficiencies by making changes to the way you use your products at the same time that you move to the cloud.
So Gary, on that topic specifically, and I know we've talked about this a number of times, funnily enough, definitely a pint of beer type conversation.
Yeah.
So from up on high, we're moving to the cloud, the CTO shouting from above, the workers are thinking, okay, I've got to deliver on this project. Is it just a case of, okay, I've got Jira behind the firewall, I'm going to cut, I'm going to shut, and it's straight into the SaaS? What are the benefits or lack of them if you do that approach?
That's often the first thought, particularly by the troops on the ground. Obviously, at the CTO level, they're just looking to cut costs and realize the benefits of these new products that they're reading about on Atlassian Cloud, particularly. But the troops on the ground are very much concerned about, we want to, we're happy to move it, but we want as little disruption as possible. And we also want to ideally keep all of our data, even though that might not be the most prudent thing to actually do. So it's quite normal for, an organization that's looking to do this to actually almost miss the wood for the trees, in terms of sort of say, okay, well, we don't want anything to change. But actually, once you start taking advantage of some of the features of particularly boutique cloud and Atlassian SaaS, if you move everything you have, you actually lose some of that benefits, because what you're actually doing is taking a lot of your dirty washing and potentially legacy ways of using the Atlassian products that you may have been doing for 4 or 5 years, which now might not easily fit into some of the new features that are available in these products. So there is an opportunity there, as I said earlier, to actually, gain far more benefit when you actually move to the cloud from just actually physically moving everything you've got from one place to another.
Okay, so let's drill into that then. So that's really interesting, because I think it's really easy to understand why users would want to just move everything. Okay, let's just take advantage of the cost per user type model. Let's get rid of the infrastructure. Let's spend more time making software. Simple phrases really. But where does this demand come from to keep all the data? Where do you see it actually come from?
Well, I actually call it digital hoarding, and it's something that a lot of people subconsciously do. I mean, how many times do you sort of have in with your email, you keep every single email in different folders, and in terms of documentation, if you work for an organization for many years, you look in your private drive, you'll probably find 10 years worth of stuff, most of which you're never going to touch or use again. And there is this instinct with a lot of people that they have to keep things just in case. That's the hoarding nature. And I've actually seen this for real, and seen the kind of cost benefits of not doing that. In a previous role I had for a large financial institution, we actually moved a lot of data from a legacy platform to a new platform back in 2008. And there was a lot of demand from the troops on the ground that all data had to be kept, regardless of whether it was still in use or not. And some of that data was up to 10 years old. And there was a lot of challenge from the executive and the CTO to say, well, why are we keeping all this stuff? Why are we having to pay to move all this stuff from one place to another? Well, in the end, we did pay to do it. It was very expensive. But as part of that business case, we actually tracked how much of that data was then used after that big migration took place. And over the course of 10 years, that data was only accessed 3 times. So a lot of money was spent. I think it was upwards of, several £100,000 was spent to move all that data, for it only then on 3 occasions in 10 years to actually be used. And we've seen this in other studies that have been done within the sector, that this is actually a common trend, that decommissioning and archiving of old data and then moving just your in-flight and relevant data, so proper records management and records management policies being in place, where you keep things for say 3-5 years, just taking the data you need when you're migrating to the cloud actually has multiple benefits. First of all, it gives you time to clean house, so you don't have to take everything, so it's less expensive. You can archive off the stuff that you don't need anymore. Secondly, you can then re-engineer maybe the way you work and take advantage of the new features on the new platform, be that boutique cloud or Atlassian cloud. And it also gives you the opportunity to actually even change and improve some of your processes, which may have been restricted by the data and the way you used the product previously. So actually sort of letting go of that sort of digital hoarding, anchor lets you sort of frees you really to not only gain the benefits in terms of infrastructure, but actually in how you're going to use the products moving forwards.
So in essence, really, you've got to be, now's the time to be brave when you make these decisions, because you will see that benefit of the digital transformation. And now more than ever, we all know about the COVID situation. It's about building ourselves up for the next 10 years now, not looking back. So in context of that, let's just talk about regulated industry. So all the advice you've just given, is that still relevant to a regulated industry?
More so, in fact, regulated industries tend to be much better at deciding what data they need to keep and what data they don't, because obviously they have audit controls and governance that says, okay, this type of data we need to retain and the rest of the data we shouldn't. And most, certainly large financial institutions, will have quite active records management policies that apply to ensure that, data that's needed to prevent fraud, things like that, is kept for the exact amount of time it needs to and no more. The rest is then just archived. And archiving is a valid solution. You can still restore the data. It's just that you're not having to pay that additional maintenance cost of both moving it and then looking after it in the new place. So it's about trimming down to just the stuff you need and not being saddled with the stuff you don't. And if you do need access to the old stuff, you just restore it from archive.
Fantastic. Cheers, Gary. That's brilliant. So in the context of digital hoarding, which is a great segue into the next area of conversation I'd like to concentrate on, can we talk about the 3 types of migrations that we often see? Let's talk about that.
So there's 3 common types. There's the big bang, which is basically where you just take everything you have today and you move it somewhere else, which we've kind of been touching on there. The second is an iterative migration, where you move maybe teams across one by one over a period of time from the original platform to your new cloud service. And then the third is to run one up and one down. So essentially what you do is you start all new teams and new projects on your cloud-based service, and then slowly over time, as your teams and projects finish and complete on the old service, you run that one down. So it's this kind of one goes up, one goes down over time, typically about 9 to 12 months. You tend to, certainly implementations I've done in the past, about 85% of teams will have moved across to the new platform after 12 months if you use the run one down, bring one up approach. Of those 3, funnily enough, the one we've just been talking about in terms of digital hoarding, the big bang approach, is actually the highest risk and the lowest benefit. So with Big Bang, you're having to take all your data at once, which means you've got to do lots of testing, which means you can have a large outage when you do it. You're bringing across all that data and potentially configuration that is no longer appropriate or may actually be holding you back. And then once you've done it, you're then saddled with a lot of the problems that you had before, so any sort of configuration issues and technical debt, you've effectively just brought it with you and moved it to a new platform. So although at Clearvision, we do have clients who go for a big bang migration, they are becoming increasingly fewer as more and more organizations realize the benefits of actually taking a more iterative approach. So we're finding now, particularly with the tools that Atlassian provides to support migrations to their cloud service, that iterative migrations are far safer. They're much lower risk. You take just the data you need, and when you need it, team by team. It means that if there are any challenges with a particular team moving, then they're limited to just that team. So you mitigate most of your operational risk, but you also realize a lot of the benefits because you can re-engineer your data and your processes as you go. Obviously, the downside of an iterative migration is the duration is longer. So it may take 3, 6, 9 months, but you avoid that big bang and that big risk. And then finally, with the running one down, bringing one up, that's the least risky of all because you're not really moving much data at all. And so what you're doing is you're realizing the benefits of cloud as quickly as possible by getting all your new teams and early adopters on the cloud platform. And then the old one, you're just going to gently run that down and archive off things that you no longer need, and maybe just take across the bits of data that you actually need, but you're not really migrating as such. You're just sort of keeping core data that's needed for the new one. That's obviously the lowest risk, and actually you can deliver value much quicker than either of the other two methods, but it runs the risk of you never actually getting rid of the old platform, and that's always another issue you might face.
We see that quite a lot in very large enterprises, because that third option is the easiest to get going, because you can buy the new cloud, whatever type of cloud it is, and it's that early adopter type approach, because often what you get in big organizations, especially if you're managing thousands of people, is you've got those people banging on your door saying, I want to use the latest and greatest, give me the best tools. But at the same time, from a people bit, again, non-technology, you've got the people who want to use it the same way they've always done, on a project that's 10 years old. And I think the third option we described allows organizations to be sort of conscious of both those type of people. We don't all work in Silicon Valley with everybody wanting to use the latest and greatest. Where we say that to customers, we work in the real world. Thank you very much. Those three really good examples. So in relation to that, Matt, let's talk about the middle ground. So we've got customers who go, I love the idea of SaaS. It's just not right for us. I need to have more control over my data. I can't have it based in the US. Data residency, that key question. But at the same time, no longer don't want my IT team running my Jira server. So we get into that middle ground. Could you describe a bit more about that for us?
Yeah, so thank you, Paul. So we see, actually, the interesting thing is we see all three types of migration in the middle ground as well. The big challenge with the big bang migration when it comes to migrating onto a clear host or managed service environment is that you often take all the problems with you as well. So you essentially end up, you might think it's no longer my problem to look after the platform, it's now someone else's problem, but there's problems in configuration, in amount of data, amount of automations, etc., that sometimes come across too. The second one, the gradual migration, when you're in the middle ground, can be quite hard and can be quite labor intensive, and obviously both for option 2 and 3, you're essentially running two environments in parallel. You're running both of them at the same time. There's additional cost, which makes the business case a bit less convincing when it comes to the management level within organizations. And the third one, again, it just carries that challenge, but it also means that you can start with a clean environment in a managed service environment, and essentially get all the benefits of, for all your new teams and new users immediately realized. What we find with boutique solutions.
Just tell us a little bit more about the support services we offer to customers in either environments. They're either on Atlassian Cloud or they're on our ClearHost platform. What demands do customers have in both of those types of situations where they need that additional support? Just talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the thing is, and this is what I say to customers all the time, you can get comfortable with Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket, Bamboo, all of these tools quite easily. The learning curve isn't that super steep. You can become a confident and quite competent user and also administrator within tens of hours. But ultimately, it takes thousands of hours to become an expert, to really understand all the ins and outs, and to get you out of all of those sticky situations. So when it comes to support, there are largely two types of customers. First of all, they're the types of customers who just need support just in case their in-house team can't do something, because they're not experts. They're competent, but they're not experts. So those types of customers, whether they're on Atlassian Cloud, i.e. the software as a service solution, or in a managed service, those types of customers will do the majority of things themselves: configuration, setting up new projects, etc., looking after the applications day to day themselves. Those sort of customers are quite happy doing that themselves. The other type of customer are the ones who don't want to run even an admin team in-house at all, who really want to delegate administration completely to a third party like Clearvision, where we deliver support services ranging from user provision, project provision, and making all the changes on our customers' behalf. So essentially being an extended resource to our customers, where they can ask Clearvision to make all the changes on their behalf, and essentially not having to resource that in-house at all. Those are the two extremes, and then there's a number of shades of grey in between. We have customers who fall somewhere in the middle as well, who might ask us to help them with some complicated Jira workflow configurations, but do most of the user management and project setup, etc. themselves.
Great. Thank you very much. Yeah, so like you say, you've got those customers who have no in-house skills, great add-on service for a customer like that. And at the same time, you've got those customers who have those in-house teams. Now, a question you should always ask yourself if you are running an in-house team is that the best use of that resource? How can they offer value to my business? And sometimes it might be more efficient to outsource elements of that. So they're not being the Jira admin all day, for example. Can they offer value in different ways? So we can help you investigate that, should that be a conversation you're having internally. So talking about conversations internally, so I'm sat there and watching this webinar and I'm thinking, okay, lots of interesting information. How the hell do I decide where to go? So what do we do? Gary, let me put that one to you first of all. How does a customer get to that decision point of which cloud is right for them?
Well, like any business decision, you should really do some homework. And, a formal business case is a good way of approaching it, because you're breaking it down into fundamentally numbers, which can help you make that decision. But you need to look at what it is you're trying to get from moving to the cloud. Is it just saving infrastructure, or are you looking to take advantage of some of the latest and greatest features that you might get? Do you want to be on the leading platform that gets all the new toys, regularly? Then obviously it's going to steer you towards probably Atlassian SaaS in that case. Are you looking for stability, reliability, and availability, as Matt says? Then you're probably looking at a boutique service or something you provide yourself in private cloud. And then you really need to think about, okay, how are we going to get to that, and what is our risk appetite? And that will then lead you down one of the three possible routes in terms of migration. So big bang, iterative, and bringing one up and running one down. How quickly do you want to realize the value? What is your risk appetite for, things like downtime and data availability? And, how quickly do you want to get things moving, really? And we find in most cases, for most clients, they tend to fall in the middle. So they tend to, go for the sort of iterative approach, maybe with several projects initially, several teams initially, and then the rest over time. That tends to be the sort of happy medium, really, of balancing risk versus benefit. So that's where I would start. Just look at the numbers, and you
Fantastic.
go from there.
Great. Okay. And then what I would like to finish on then is decommissioning and archiving. And the reason I want to finish there is I want people to feel reassured that although there's a path to the cloud, there's also a path to supporting that history that we talked about. We touched on it before. So let's go into a little bit of detail about, maybe Gary, you start, and then Matt, you take over. So decommissioning, archiving, real time. Let's just talk about that and give people that comfortable feeling that this is a path they can take.
Sure. I mean, in an ideal world, when you adopt new products and tools, you should really plan for their decommissioning the day they launch. So for most, in the IT industry, for most software tools, you're looking at a 5 to 10 year life cycle for a tool. You're then, after 5, 6, 7 years, you're starting to look at replacements or possibly alternative products. That's the typical cycle you go through. So really, you should be thinking about, okay, what are we going to do with the data after that period of time? And that's not always easy, because not all products make it easy for you to do that. I mean, fortunately, the Atlassian tools make that super easy, so it's less of a challenge. Then you've got to decide, okay, what we're going to do when we start to decommission. So you've got a few options. You can maintain and run a mothballed instance of that software. So you could, for example, run a Jira server on low specs on a virtual machine or something that's just sat there. And if you need it, or you could snapshot it and save it, of course. If you need that data, you can just spin it back up or access it and get the data that you've archived off or decommissioned in there. One of the benefits really of early Atlassian licensing around particularly Jira Server, the server products like Jira and Bitbucket, is it's a it's a perpetual license, so you're licensed for the lifetime of the product. Obviously, you might not want to continue paying the maintenance if you're not using it anymore, but it is yours. Another alternative, of course, and one thing the Atlassian tools do very well is they allow you to export the data. So you can always export the data, store that somewhere in your data warehouse or solutions, or offsite backups, offsite storage. And then if you need to retrieve it, it's just a case of getting it back, having spinning up a virtual machine that's running the same version of the software and just restoring it. And that process is actually relatively straightforward, and it's something you can obviously rehearse and prove that it works, and you can then potentially retain that data for upwards of 10 years, sometimes more, in that form. So it comes back to the question before, really, about if you're looking to re-platform and move to the cloud. When it comes to decommissioning, it's all about planning how you're going to do that. So are you going to go for an archiving approach, or just having like a zombie server that just sits there and no one uses, that you occasionally access because you want to access some old data? And then how you then handle that data moving forward. So where's it stored? How's it secured? And how do you restore it when you need to? All these things are doable and easy, and actually relatively cheap.
Great. Cheers, Gary. And then Matt, what about from your side?
When it comes to, and Gary's already touched on that, when it comes to archiving, you don't necessarily always need to archive data in such a way that you can recover a Jira project in the future so you can carry on working on the same project. That is a different type of archiving requirement. As Gary said, there's two different ways of archiving it. If you just extract data out, the relevant data that your regulator, for example, if you're in a regulated industry, needs you to be able to recover at a point in the future, then an archive into CSV files or Excel spreadsheets could actually be fine, which could then be archived off to a low-cost service such as Amazon, AWS Glacier, where the data goes to offsite storage and it costs you virtually nothing to store the data there. When you need to archive your data in such a way that you can continue or could potentially continue with the project in the future, then a mothballed instance or a low spec instance is an option. And as an Atlassian solution provider here, we have taken customers to Atlassian Cloud in the past, where an archived or mothballed environment was migrated to ClearHost, one at a much lower spec, which basically means where previously the customer might have had a 4-node Atlassian data center, very large instances, load balanced environment. We've taken them to a single instance, so small that just about a few users can go in there and look at data should they need to, which essentially reduces the cost an awful lot, but means that you could potentially, if you really wanted to, carry on from where you left off. It really depends on your archiving requirements there. And also what's really important is when it comes to discussing these requirements, and Gary mentioned the business cases, it's so important to start with that business case to make sure that where you're going makes financial sense to your business as well as makes sense in terms of what the core purpose of your business is. If your core purpose is not looking after tools, then give that problem to somebody else, and don't try to meddle with setting up your own private cloud environment. But the other one is that these business cases, once you've written it, when you get to a certain point, it's a good idea to have a conversation with an Atlassian solution provider to see how they can help you make that decision, give you the right input. And here at Clearvision, we've given that input and run workshops with customers in the past with absolutely no obligation to come to our platform or for us to even move them to Atlassian Cloud, but to give them, the ask the right questions so customers can make their own choices based on their requirements that they have, because that is a very individual thing.
Great, thank you very much, Matt. Okay, so let's sum this up. So the direction of travel for, I suppose, the whole IT industry really is the cloud. There's absolutely options available to all customers. 75% of Jira and Confluence customers are all still behind the firewall. So very likely people watching this are thinking, this is definitely on my roadmap for the next 18 months. But there's options. So Clearvision is all about offering the right solution to you. We don't mind whether it's Atlassian Cloud, ClearHost. At the same time, you may have a great AWS team, and therefore the right place to take it is actually your own AWS private cloud. What we'd like to do to help you make these decisions, we're running 90-minute cloud strategy workshops. We're going to try and answer those key questions for you. You know, is the cloud viable? Let's answer that first. Which is the best cloud? So Atlassian Cloud, Boutique Cloud, which is our ClearHost platform, or a private cloud. What will the benefits be to you? What will the benefits be to your teams? What will the benefits be to your business? What's the potential ROI? You know, how quickly can you pay back this project and this move? And then we'll also offer you that high-level transition and risk mitigation plan, like we've done for hundreds of customers before. So thank you very much to Gary. Thank you very much to Matt. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you found that valuable and informative. And if you need any information from Clearvision, all our contact details are below the screen here. And we look forward to speaking to you again. Thank you. Bye-bye.